I want to get into the off season because I feel like this off season has definitely been, I think, very underwhelming for the average Piston fan. But I mean, we're kind of just like your overall thoughts with the off season.
Um, it's kind of a lot to rationalize because on one hand, I understand anyone who's really frustrated that this team ultimately did not take a big swing, quote unquote, this offseason because you come into the deadline this past season, and you're thinking, okay, we're going to, really make a push to be finals contenders. And then you hear Trajan come out and say, okay, well, no, we're not ready for that. We haven't won a first round series yet. Like, let's take it one step at a time. And you can understand that process. And then even like last offseason, kind of the same thing where fans were kind of hoping that they would be a little more aggressive than they were. So all that to say that I understand any fan that is frustrated with this offseason. I can't sit here and act like I don't get it or act like, it's like unreasonable. I think it's totally reasonable. Mm-hmm. You look at what this team did in the postseason and the fact that they were, really close to the Eastern Conference Finals, even though they kind of had a bit of a nightmare playoff run. It felt like this team could take that next step. That being said, I do think they got better, marginally, but I do think they got better. I look at John Collins. I think that's a great addition to this team. He's someone that we've talked about for years as a potential Piston. And I actually had the pleasure to meet him in Summer League, and he's a really cool guy and seems pretty excited about coming to Detroit. So hopefully that should be encouraging to any Pistons fan that, because sometimes like when guys sign with Detroit, you don't always know if they're like excited to come, but he's definitely excited. And I think Cade can unlock a lot of his game that wasn't really showcased in Los Angeles this last year. I thought, and I said this before, I thought his time in Utah is kind of the blueprint for how to use him as more of a not high volume, but more of a use him more than Ty Lue. Basically, that's the nice version of what I was trying to say.
That's the bar.
Yeah, and not to be a knock on Ty Lue, but I just didn't think they got the best out of John Collins, and I think he's still a really good power forward in the league. And I think the vertical spacing he provides, along with being a pretty good 3-point shooter. I mean, there's been games where he's killed the Pistons the last few years, so that's another Pistons killer a little bit added to the roster. And then Isaiah Joe, obviously, that was the first move that they made. I think he's a really talented 3-point shooter, obviously, but I also think he has a lot more than 3-point shooting to add to this team. His athleticism is actually really underrated. He gets to the rim pretty well, and he's had quite a few posters. And I think he can be a talented scorer. I think he has the potential to be more than what he has been. It kind of reminded me a little bit of the Malik Beasley contract back in like 2024, summer of 2024. Ironically, on this, I think it was this podcast where I was like, yeah, man, I don't think fans are talking about Malik Beasley enough before the season. Kind of the same feeling with Isaiah Joe. Not to say he's going to break the 3-point record or anything like that, like how Malik Beasley did, but I do think he can pop on this team if he's given a bigger role than he was in OKC. He's been a really good player for a really good team for a while now, and I feel like in a bigger role, he can take a leap as an offensive player. I would like to see him, with a little more scoring juice. I'd like to see him be like a focal point of this offense if this is the team that they're running out day one. And then on top of that, I mean, you just look at like what else they did this offseason. You look at the Kevin Huerter contract.
Yeah.
I can understand why fans were not super thrilled with that, but he provides depth at least, and you hope that the 3-point shot can get back to what it used to be. I did think he provided some good ancillary stuff off, like outside of the 3-point shooting. I thought you could definitely feel his impact in game, especially like before injury, that he had a little stretch where he was playing really well. So I can see the value there. It does make the rotations a little bit confusing, looking at, trying to map out who's going to play, who's not going to play. That's the one signing that really made all of this a little more muddied to me because like it's like, okay, then you brought back Javante, but you're not paying Kevin Huerter like $9 million to be a third string guy. But then you also still have Duncan, which I think also that's like an underrated part of this entire offseason is having two elite 3-point shooters on this team is quite literally the recipe for success. We saw it with Tim Hardaway Jr. and Malik Beasley in 2024. And then they went away from it last year where like almost all of that burden was on Duncan Robinson. And if they had another shooter in the playoffs, who knows where they would have gone? Because that 3-point shooting really dried up a lot of times for them. So if they have two 3-point shooters, we know that it opens up a lot for this offense, and it also opens up a lot for Cade. So I think that's also a really underrated part. But then again, like it's just part of the rotation question of like, okay, who's going to play, who's not going to play? Because there's just so many guys on this team. It's a deep team, I will say. I think they're going to miss Isaiah Stewart in terms of rim protection. I got to get that out the way.
Oh yeah,
that one hurt. That one hurt. I can't lie. That one hurt.
Yeah, for sure.
But outside of that, I feel like this team is roughly around where they were last year, if not a little bit better. The only issue is that the Eastern Conference has really improved, and that's its own conversation that I'm sure we'll get into more. But yeah, for sure. Those are basically my thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like they've improved, but just so marginally that it's like, I'm glad you brought up the Malik Beasley, Tim Hardaway, because like it's similar spacing, but like you talked about Isaiah Joe, you talked about Duncan. I mean, you have Taurean Prince, who's been a 40% 3-point shooter. Like, I don't know where you play him back up 4, maybe, which I'm not really too thrilled with. A 6'6" guy playing back up 4. I don't know if they keep Gary Harris, even though do you have like 6 shooting guards on the roster? Like, do you really need to carry 6 shooting guards? I don't really think so. I mean, Jazz Lanier had a hell of a summer league. Who I know we're going to get in the summer league in segment 2, but I mean, like, there's just so many shooting guards on this roster where you look at the shooting guard room, it is easily the most stacked room. And backup power forward is still a big weakness. It's been a big weakness since Trajan has got here. I don't really understand. Like, maybe there just wasn't a player out there that made sense for them contractively, but like, it's still a big hole on this team.
It definitely is. I think right now, though, that the idea has to be playing Ron Holland as the backup 4, and that's part of like the rotation thing I was bringing up earlier, because Ron has to be like a big part of this team moving forward, right? Yeah. Especially going into year 3 now. Hopefully you're seeing more development with the shot, with just the on-ball scoring or the transition scoring, which he has shown real flashes of. And at the end of the season, his 3-point shot was hitting at a pretty decent clip as well. So if he can find his way into this rotation like permanently, because like you have to believe that's a priority for this team, right? Is to make him a big part of this team. So I would think it's as the backup power forward, because you still have like $9 million to Kevin Huerter is not like, that's just guaranteed you're in the rotation, right? So, and then Duncan Robinson, of course, $15 million, Isaiah Joe, $11 million. And this is just like strictly speaking, like contractual wise, not even like basketball on the court fit, whatever. Those are all guys who play the 2-3, right? So, and then on top of that, like one of them has to start. Personally, I think Isaiah Joe, I would start him. I thought Duncan Robinson was really good off the bench in that Cleveland series, like towards game 6 and 7. I thought he was incredible. Even then, like, okay, backup shooting guard, would be maybe Duncan, and then you still got Huerter at the 3, and then that's legit. That's legit. It like no matter how you shake it, Ron Holland's the backup power forward. So it makes the Taurean Prince thing also a little interesting. Like, is Taurean just going to be a third string guy at this point in his career? Because he's kind of always been like a 20+ per minute guy. It's a lot. JB's got a lot to figure out. I do understand the concerns about the backup power forward. But I think if you're Trajan, the hope is, Ron can grow into that role eventually. And the only thing, because I mean, like Ron's like 6'8", like he's like a true 6'8", like like he's a big dude. He just is a little bit like skinnier in frame. But I would think that like that's where they see it, and they just go from there.
Yeah, I mean, I know some Pistons fans like cringe at like backup four with Ron, which I like the discourse on Twitter is so interesting when you put out depth charts, and we did like a whole depth chart podcast. We made a graphic, and like I didn't have Ron as a backup power forward. I had him as a backup small forward backing up Sar. I was just like, I just don't know. I feel like, you know, different situations, different teams, different lineups. You definitely could, but I still feel like they definitely need one. I kind of wanted to like piggyback off of this topic. Like, what do you think the biggest concern with this team still is, if you had to pinpoint just like maybe one or two issues?
Well, one of them would be the fact that you might have lost a little bit of your identity. Tobias and Isaiah Stewart, like as offseason departure, like the thing with those two specifically, there was always, you know, their names in trade rumors and conversations and stuff like that. But the messaging that Pistons fans and the messaging that was relayed just through the media as well was, you know, these guys are like the heartbeat of the team, right? Like they are the Detroit Pistons. Like Tobias Harris is the veteran leader. He literally was the reason that they were able to make that 3-1 comeback in Orlando, because he was the one guy that really like held down the ship the entire time. And I think there's going to be a lot missed there in terms of leadership. But then in another part, Isaiah Stewart, like when you talk about what made this team special, the word grit, right, comes up. And there is no player that embodied that more than Isaiah Stewart. And I think Troy Weaver was obviously not an amazing Pistons general manager, but one of the things that he said that I really resonated with was that Isaiah Stewart, like, is the identity of the Detroit Pistons. And like, without him, he doesn't know what the identity would be. It was something along those lines. I'm paraphrasing, but I really do struggle to see like where that kind of edge comes from, you know, like it made the Pistons a lot more intimidating. And that this all like plays a role like on the court as well. Like having an enforcer, having a guy who also was like one of the best rim protectors in basketball, period. I think that's like a lot to miss. Not to say I don't think Paul Reed can be a great backup center, because of course he can. We saw it in the playoffs. But just on like the identity aspect, because like the identity was such a big part of this team. Trajan himself, like there was a conversation at the like post trade deadline press conference where he was talking about like talent versus identity, or talent versus culture. And he was saying that, you know, a good culture can beat good talent, especially in today's NBA. And with the loss of like two of your biggest culture guys, it really like begs the question, will the culture be the same? Of course, like JB is going to bring, you know, that identity as much as he can, because like that's the type of coach he is. But those are two really big guys to lose. And the thought process with like losing them was always that you were going to replace them, especially like Tobias specifically, with like a real star level guy. And this is part of why I do understand why fans can be upset, because like fans get attached to like buying into like identity and buying into like the messaging that Trajan like, you know, is putting out there. And when you really sell fans on the idea that these guys are a huge part of the identity, they are a huge part of what made this team as special as it was, losing them for ultimately like not much, right? Because Stu was essentially traded for 3 second-round picks that were 3 second-round picks that they had already traded, you know, so it's kind of like a bit of a wash. And then Tobias obviously just walked in free agency. It does make it a little bit questionable. It does, because like running back the team essentially and making marginal improvements implies that you have what made the previous team special. And maybe there's a question that you don't, right? With Isaiah Stewart gone, with Tobias Harris gone, like, and this isn't even like strictly speaking like analytics, whatever. I'm strictly speaking like culture, because all of this plays a role. And I think especially for the Pistons, like the way that they were able to succeed wasn't a traditional basketball fit, because it wasn't the most talented team. They'll tell you themselves that, right? Like they were a grit culture, I'll bust your ass. I'll play harder defense. Like I'll fight you if I have to. Like that was a huge part of it. So whoever carries on that type of role, it ultimately will carry on that culture. But that's a big part of it. And when you look at this team, that's a big concern for me.
I know we had conversations this summer, like when Isaiah Stewart got traded. I was like, man, I probably would have rolled with Stu over JD because I don't value the center position like some other fans do. That's just me, even though he had an incredible season. We'll talk about Turn at the end of the podcast, but I think you're right. Like you lose two guys that were so important to that locker room on and off the court. Like I feel like a part of the fan base died when they traded Isaiah Stewart because he embodied, I think, what a lot of older generation fans fell in love with the previous championship team with the Going to Work Pistons, because he started to become that rim protector that I think a lot of Detroit fans love. And not to mention the shit talking, the crash outs, which I love the crash outs. They were probably some of my favorite memories with Stu, but I think I was really underwhelmed by just the process of the trade because I was like, okay, if you're dumping him, there has to be maybe a bigger move out there. And then it becomes this like 6-team trade where you're also able to get off Karis LeVert and you're bringing in John Collins. And I was like, man, that's really underwhelming to lose a guy that not only defensively helped you have the second-rated defense last year, but you're also losing identity and a culture. And not to mention Tobias as well. I mean, that was your second leading scorer in the playoffs. Like, where's that production going to come in now? So, I mean, I think those are my biggest concerns. And then, like, obviously having a secondary creator as well. Because, I mean, you look at this team, I think it's well equipped for the regular season. I think the playoffs, you're going to have a similar, different type of I don't want to say struggles, but I think you're going to run into the same type of like roadblocks that you've had over the past two playoff series. But that's if they don't make any more moves to start the season or maybe during the trading deadline or in the middle of the season. But I mean, those are my biggest concerns with this roster right now.
Yeah, the secondary creator part's a good shout. That was also like one other thing that kind of goes without saying at this point. It's been talked to death. Yeah. Obviously, Ibuka Corey has on-ball juice. We'll talk about that, I'm sure, in the summer league portion of things. But there's no way that the expectation is that he's going to come in and be that guy day one. Because also, I don't know where he is in the rotation day one right now. Like, we both are very high on Ibuka, but another part of it is, will he play? How will he fit into the rotation? How would he play? We don't really have an answer for all these things. So yeah, having a true secondary creator, not really having that is also a big question mark. And it is kind of something that Trajan had talked about even post draft. I forgot who it was, someone from 97.1, I believe, asked Trajan, does Ibuka really address that secondary creation thing that you were, talking about as a big, like the on-ball creation specifically? Does that address it? And he said, like, it does, but they still have more to work on. And obviously that was pre-free agency and everything like that. But, like there ended up being no real answer unless like you just kind of go, with Cade as the offensive engine once again. And the one thing I will say is like they did add a lot of great play finishers. Like John Collins, an elite play finisher in my opinion. Isaiah Joe, elite play finisher. If you do play Ibuka, I think he can provide on-ball creation, and like all these guys can complement two guys in Cade and Ibuka who do create a lot on ball. But like there is no real secondary creator right now, and I don't expect it to be Ibuka day one. As high as I am on him, like that's a lot to ask, and I don't think that's like realistic to expect. So yeah, I think that's a big concern as well.
Yeah, I mean, I know like they're at 16 roster spots. They still have a little bit of wiggle room, like with the cap space. I mean, do you see them making maybe any type of moves? I'm considering it might be a small move. Maybe there's another trade on the horizon, possibly.
I mean, it's hard to say like for sure they're done. But I don't really see anything else. Like obviously right now they're at 16, I think, players, including Duran. Yeah. So I think likely someone would probably end up getting waived. But I don't necessarily see like a trade on the horizon. I do think the deadline is the target as like the evaluation point. I think they'll look at this deadline and go, okay, are we where we want to be? Do we feel like we address what we want to address, and like what's working on this team, what's not working on this team? And then I think they would probably go with, whatever move that fans are really clamoring for. That's probably when it would happen, if it did happen at all. But no, and until then, I don't really see anything.
Yeah, I mean, I just assume that Gary Harris gets waived and then they're at their 15. Even though they interviewed him during the summer league, which I was kind of confused by, but it's just like, we'll just grab somebody to interview. But I don't really know what he has to offer. I know he's been really injured over the past few seasons, but maybe he's just another vet. I don't know. Maybe it's a battle between him and Chaz in training camp and preseason. Who knows, man? Who really knows?
Yeah, they have a while to make that decision on who gets cut.
Yeah, but hey, maybe there's a trade. Yeah, never say never. I mean,
yeah,
they were linked to DeMar DeRozan, and I was just like, please no.
I mean, if you want to talk about that for a second, the two that came up recently were DeMar and Bennedict Mathurin. Mm-hmm. Granted, like neither I don't think really have real traction, but the idea of them I kind of get. Like DeMar, I kind of understand, because it's not saying DeMar is going to be your answer. He's like I don't think they would even try to pitch it like that to fans. I think he would basically fill the Tobias role, and you look at what, like, especially offensively, what made Tobias a on-ball creator was his mid-range game. That was it. That was basically it. Because when Tobias would get the ball, he'd work that mid-post, and it was always like a mid-post fade, usually. DeMar kind of does the same thing, right? Like, obviously not the same player, but I don't think the fit is as bad as people say it is. Now, it's bad if you're starting him with Asar and JD, because then who's doing the shooting. But if he's coming off the bench, I don't really see an issue with it. It does, again, make the rotation questions even more confusing, but I don't necessarily hate it. If DeMar ended up coming to Detroit, I doubt he does. I think he'll probably end up in like Cleveland, Golden State, or if him and Drake end up patching up things, maybe Toronto. But for Bennedict Mathurin, if that is something they kick the tires on, I don't mind it at all. I mean, that obviously would be a sign and trade, so that would be a trade that maybe you could look at. According to I think it was Brett Siegel, he said that they talked to his camp in Vegas, so we'll see. Obviously, Mathurin's a flawed player. He was part of that 2022 draft, but I do think there's still a lot to him. I think he'd fit perfectly in the Pistons like transition focused offense. I think he's obviously a hell of an athlete. His 3-point shot's actually really not bad. I think this year he shot around like 34% or something like that, but he has good 3-point rate, and throughout like his entire career so far, he's gotten up around like, I think 3 to 4 per game. So he's someone who's not afraid to shoot. And I mean, he hits at an okay enough clip that I think you'd feel comfortable with it. And then obviously he has the ability to create a little more on ball. Does he get tunnel vision a little bit when he's doing so? Yes, for sure. Yeah. But there is hypothetical creation there. So I do kind of see the vision, and he's only like, I think, 23, 24. So again, like, he would fit the timeline of this team. Not saying like neither of these guys I don't think would be the answer long term, but maybe Mathurin a little bit more if he really comes along development wise. But outside of that, I think they're done. But those are two guys that I think would be interesting. I would actually personally, I would really be interested with Bennedict Mathurin, but I don't know if that's something that actually would happen.
Yeah, the DeMar thing, like, I would be 100% out if he was starting, because he's worse than Duncan Robinson defensively. Like, I don't think people realize how bad he is at the defensive end. Like, all of his energy goes on the offensive end, which, I mean, at this stage of his career, I get it. Like you don't want to pull something like trying to switch or rotate. Like I'd be open if he took like a Karras role on this team, but that's the only way I would like really want DeMar in Detroit. But then you would have to do some roster maneuvering to try to like make room for him. I'm with you on the Bennedict Mathurin. I think it makes a little bit more sense, like stylistically. I know Rick Carlisle had him off the bench in Indiana, and then I thought he did okay with the Clippers, but I think it was just a learning and an adjustment period. He didn't really shoot the ball the best from the perimeter when he was in LA. But I mean, I remember the conversations in 22 with him and Ivy, and like he wanted to go 5 to the Pistons, and we drafted Ivy at 5. But I mean, that would kind of just be like a kind of like a funny transition if the Pistons were able to sign and trade him with the Clippers. Who knows what happens with the Clippers, because they want Peyton Watson, and Sam Presti just pulled the biggest dick move I've ever seen. With Denver, like Denver's got to make a decision whether they want to be a second apron team. So I mean, there's a lot of different things that maybe Ben Math could be a Piston, maybe they bring him back. I mean, he's restricted as well. So I mean, I'm with you. I'd rather have Ben Math than DeMar DeRozan
for sure. Yeah,
but that's just me.
Yeah, I mean, I think Bennedict Mathurin also is a better defender at this stage than DeMar, like obviously as you mentioned. So I was really high on Jaden Ivey in the 2022 NBA draft. Like that was 100% my guy in that draft. I will take the loss on that. I will admit that obviously things did not work out how they were supposed to work out for him. For one reason or another, it just didn't work.
Yeah.
That being said, I also was really high on Bennedict Mathurin. So, I'm sure I have it somewhere in my phone, but like I think this was when you and I were at Woodward. I was like, I made a right before I got to Woodward, I made like a Jaden Ivey, Cade Cunningham like video edit back in the day, and this was when I was just like making edits. And this was before my credentialed days or all that stuff. So if you remember me from then, shout out to you. But I had one that I literally never finished it, and I was like in my drafts forever, and it was Bennedict Mathurin, Cade Cunningham, one of like the exact same template, and it just like never saw the light of day. So that was just kind of funny. I was like, man, if that happens, like full circle.
I mean, hey, like what's Portland doing? Are they going to stay in Portland? What's Shaden Sharp doing these days? Like, you never know. You never know. I thought those were 3 guys that like every Piston fan just fought with when we were at 5, because we like obviously we knew we needed a 2 guard.
Well, you can't forget about Keegan Murray too.
Yeah, I remember the hype there. I mean, maybe there's a sign and trade with. You never know.
Sacramento.
You never know. You never know. That would just kind of just be like, we're just going to bring in all the top 5 picks in the 22 NBA draft.